Hey, good to see you guys. It's your old pal, Ray the CPA. So today I want to talk to you guys briefly about, in our documentation series, I want to talk to you guys about standalone documentation. What do I mean? So again, in previous episodes, when describing documentation, you want to be able to prove that the thing that you did had a valid business purpose, and you want to be able to basically justify what you spent. So it has a valid business purpose, where you went, what you did, with whom, all of that needs to be recorded. Again, we've got best practice, never rely on your memory. Best practice, you always want to be able to document the whys, right? So what do I mean by standalone? If you are documenting your expenses or your other business activities, if you're doing that properly and you have substantiary evidence for whatever that is, right? It should stand alone, meaning somebody with a reasonable knowledge of your business should be able to look at it, okay? Yep, okay, and not have to ask you a bunch of questions. As a former auditor, one of the things that is excruciating for an auditor, and it's excruciating for your organization too, is when you provide support that you have to an auditor or to a banker or to anyone, to somebody outside of your department, let's say, right? And then they have to follow up with you where you have to explain and tell them a story. That's not standalone. So if I do an expense report, internal, I do an expense report, I fill it out, and then I give it back to my finance department. If they've got to call me back and say, hey, I see a receipt here for $1,200 to Boca de Beppo. Can you help me out? The reason they're doing that to you is because that receipt is missing who you ate dinner, why you did it, what was the valid business purpose. It has what you did, right? You went to Boca de Beppo and spent a lot of money, but it doesn't necessarily detail why, who, where, and when. Well, it gives you when and what, right? If you have a dinner receipt. But it needs to stand alone, meaning no one has to ask you, okay? I'll give you the story to illustrate. When I was in boot camp for the Army National Guard, our drill sergeants would come in and they'd have an inspection of your locker, right? So your locker should have 4 uniforms, right? 2 summer, 2 winter, and you had 1 uniform on, and then you'd have like your PT mat. All your stuff would be in that locker, right? But when you folded things, so imagine when you go in the store and they have the jeans folded. If you have one thing askew, that sergeant is going to start picking and picking and picking and picking and picking and eventually rip your locker apart. And you're always going to have some errors in how you're preparing for an inspection, right? It's designed to kind of get you. But if everything at first glance is in order, there's no reason to dig. You're fine. So I say that with standalone documentation. If you have documentation that has the proper standalone W's, right? You've hit your who, what, why, where, and when. If you hit those, there's no reason to look any further. This is fine. I can move on. Your audits will go quicker. Your expense reports will go through the procedure at your organization much easier. The IRS will have less of a problem with you because you have something that you can just give somebody. Hey, here, auditor. Here, investor. Because let's get real. This is about saving you money or gaining you money. That's what everything kind of boils down to. So you want to make sure that you have that. So recommendations. If you've got a receipt, let's say for a meal, right? There's no such thing as meal and entertainment anymore. There's only meal. There's meal expenses that can be a deduction, right? The IRS changed that in 2017. So let's say that you have a big expenditure to a caterer. You can make a deduction for, like, let's say, an office party, for the meal portion of that office party. But what you should do is, in your Concur, or let's just use Concur. Concur is a travel expense documentation tool. You're entering your expense report in that, or let's say you're doing it by hand, right? So you want to write who attended. Okay, I got Ray and John and them, and Ralphie. Ralphie's my brother. John's my nephew. But anyway, I got Joe Angel, my other nephew. So I've got these guys at a dinner. Why do I have them at the dinner? Because I'm prospecting for new business, or because I'm doing a holiday office party, or because it's a employee appreciation meal. Whatever it is, I document that in the software, on my handwritten report, or on the back of the receipt. I used to, when I travel, I write right on the back of the receipt. I did this. I went to Idaho to meet with Mr. Munson for potential business opportunity, right? It was Ray and John. It was Ray and Ralphie. Whoever was there. What we had is going to be on the itemized receipt. Don't do the summary receipt. Do the itemized receipt, so everything can be listed. That way that it's not going to look like you're doing anything untoward, right? So you want as transparent as possible in your documentation. That way, if I'm auditing you, if I'm auditing you, I'm an external auditor, and I want to justify your travel expense line, and I'm looking at that receipt, right? And if I'm looking at that receipt, I'm going to say, okay, Ray's the CFO. He went to dinner with X. Okay, he went to Buca de Beppo. They had dinner, and this is why. Okay, I'm good. I'm putting that to the side. Done. And I'm on to the next thing. If you don't have that there, and I'm just looking at a receipt, $1,200, Ruth's Chris, I don't know what that means, right? So that is the essence of standalone. Make sure your documentation always stands alone. Always. All right? It'll protect you, and it'll save you money, because your audits will be smoother, and that means they'll be shorter. You have to pay less. Or an investor that's looking at your books is going to say, you know what? I'm going to give a grant to these guys. I'm going to invest in these guys. Why? Because their financials make friggin' sense. Many a times, it's the bane of small businesses, nonprofits, any business really. Somebody shows up. They want to make a decision about your organization. Okay, that's what you want to make things transparent for potential decision makers, whomever those might be. It might even be you. You're trying to decide if you can stay open. If your documentation doesn't stand alone, if it's not good documentation, it's not going to help you make a decision. It's not going to help an investor make a decision. It's not going to help a donor make a decision. It's just not helpful if your records aren't accurate. And supporting documentation that stands alone, meaning you don't have to explain it to anybody else, it stands by itself, is always what you want. Now again, this is a 10-minute video, so it's going to be much simpler than if you and I were to work together on this, but it'll do. So again, this is Ray the CPA. You can reach me at CBT Limited. I'm on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn. Look forward to hearing from you. All right, take care.